Welcome back to another edition of This Month at the TNM. This month we're going to look back at the prior election, as well as look forward to the midterm elections coming this fall. We all know that open, fair, and honest elections are the bedrock of our republic. Every eligible citizen deserves to have faith that their vote will be reliably counted. It's the only way we can be sure our government is really by the people, for the people. The 2020 election happened during a once-in-a-century pandemic. This gave politicians an excuse to totally upend our voting processes with haphazard executive orders, anti-transparency measures, and 11th-hour changes to our election process. As citizens, we need to be concerned about these efforts. And if recent polling information is any indication, most citizens are concerned. Here are some recent results. 75% of Americans, including 69% of black voters and 60% of Democrats polled, support voter ID requirements. A recent NPR poll found that 80% of Americans want voter ID. According to an Axis research poll, 68% of voters believe that the state legislatures should decide the voting rules and regulations for their state, not the federal government. And by a 33-point margin, American believes that voting in their area is already easy and want to see election reform focus on making sure elections are fair and free of voter fraud. Recent polling by the RNC shows 87% of voters are against ballot harvesting. More than 80% of voters are in favor of voter ID requirements. 78% of all voters support a proposed plan with the following 5 principles: presenting voter ID, signature verification, chain of custody controls, bipartisan observers, and cleaning up voter rolls. Dinesh D'Souza has released a new documentary called 2,000 Mules that shines a light on some pretty questionable things that happened during the 2020 elections. Let's take a look at a preview of this film.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. Let me say it again.
The 2020 election was the most secure
election in American history.
Let me begin by asking a very simple question. Do we know the truth about what really happened in the 2020 election?
I think millions of Americans know something went wrong, and they have little pieces, and no one's really put it together.
I'm agnostic on this question, and I am awaiting more information.
If I believed the president were a Nazi, I might steal an election.
Bold accusations require bold evidence, and they haven't seen it.
We have been working on something big.
Show me the money.
Can we meet? I've been working with Greg Phillips. He has a deep background in election intelligence.
True the Vote has the largest store of election intelligence for the 2020 elections in the world. No one has more data than we do. We identified in Atlanta 242 mules that went to an average of 24 drop boxes. But Philadelphia alone, we've identified more than 1,100 mules.
What is a mule?
Person picking up ballots and running them to the drop boxes.
This is not grandma out walking her dog. Bad backgrounds, bad reputations. They are interested in one thing, that's money.
And in no shape, in no way, in no time is that legal.
This is organized crime.
Do you have video evidence?
4 million minutes of surveillance video around the country.
What you're about to see is disturbing.
So this is 1 o'clock in the morning.
Don't we all vote at 1 o'clock in the morning?
On one night, this person, this mule, went across 6 counties to 27 different drop boxes.
I call it the Mexican mafia, seriously, because they work like that.
This is jaw-dropping.
What you showed is frightening.
It's just sickening to me.
Now we come to the most important question of all. Was the magnitude of vote trafficking enough to tip the balance in the 2020 presidential election?
It's not a leap to say this would have made a difference.
They have ruined Election Day in the United States of America. That's provable. And that's enough for me to fight the left with every fiber in my body.
Without free and fair elections, we are not a democracy. We are a criminal cartel masquerading as a democracy.
Well, that should stimulate some discussion in your groups. Now, here's something that really caught my attention. Did you know that since 1982, the Republican Party had been legally prohibited from contesting elections due to suspected vote fraud because of a legal agreement called the consent decree that the GOP made with the Democrat Party? Well, finally, 36 years later, a judge has ended the agreement, and that frees the Republican Party up to investigate and pursue suspected vote fraud to help ensure election integrity. Now let's look to the future. We know election reforms are needed. There are many things that need to be considered, and this will be the subject of a future program. The TNM Election Integrity Task Force is thoroughly investigating and vetting solutions and will be helping to prepare a legislative package to be pre-filed in the next session to solve as many of these as we can. For now, we want to consider what we can do right now. As citizens concerned with the future of our country, and hopefully the past and future republic, we need to become involved in preserving our freedoms. One of the greatest of these is the freedom to have fair and honest elections. We have to be able to have faith in our election process. But in order to be able to have faith, we need to be vigilant. That means being involved. This subject is near and dear to me. My wife has been a precinct chair for many years, and I'm the early voting ballot board judge for our county. In these positions, we're able to keep close watch on the process. Fortunately, we live in a rural area where the founding principles matter. But not all areas, even in the great state of Texas, live by those principles. The upcoming midterm elections are going to be crucial for our future. As we've already seen, there are some who want to corrupt the process for their own goals. This cannot be allowed. We must be able to trust the results of our elections, and you can help in this effort. There are many ways you can help protect the vote. Let's talk about some of them. This may seem obvious, but you should support and elect candidates that you trust. Make your county party chair and whoever is in charge of elections for your county do their job to protect the integrity of the elections. Treat even local elections, city, county, school board, seriously. All elections have to be trusted. Bring resolutions to your county party executive meetings aimed at increasing security for the elections. Things such as sequentially numbered ballots, properly vetting mail-in ballots, handing over true audit logs, transparency on lease agreements with election management system vendors, paper ballots or hybrid paper systems. Senate Bill 1 deals with election integrity and security in Texas by making it harder for fraudulent votes to be cast. We need to let our elected officials know that we support these efforts. And lastly, you can sign up to work the election as a volunteer. This is one of the most important things you can do to help keep our elections on the up and up. We need to leave no vacancies in these positions. Let's take a closer look at some of the positions you can volunteer for. Poll watcher. This is a person appointed by a candidate or political action committee to observe the conduct of an election on behalf of a candidate, a political party, or the proponents or opponents of a measure. You can touch nothing, but you can watch everything. Reporting forms are provided. It's 4 or 5 hours of service needed. Election clerk. Individuals appointed by the presiding judge to assist in running the election. The presiding judge designates the working hours and duties to be performed by the election clerk serving under the judge. If enough volunteers are available, they can have roles such as early voting election clerk, election day clerk, and deputy clerk. Early voting ballot board. This board processes early voting results and mail-in ballots from the territory served by the early voting clerk. It consists of a presiding judge, an alternate judge, and at least one other member. The time required for this depends on how many members you have on the board and how many mail-in ballots you have to process. In my experience, we do most of them in one day, normally Election Day, then come back a week later and do the few that arrive after but are postmarked by Election Day. Signature Verification Committee. The Signature Verification Committee is a group that meets sometimes prior to Election Day to compare the signatures on the applications for ballot by mail to the corresponding carrier envelopes. This can also be part of the early voting ballot board. Central Count. Counting the ballots. Ballots cast during the election are tabulated and election reports are generated based on those tabulations. Volunteer attorneys can work on the rapid response team to be available during elections for legal advice. After the election, there are other places you can serve, such as working with the audit of the results, as well as any recounts that may be conducted. The time commitment for these positions will vary from county to county, depending on things like how many voters you can expect and how many workers are available. In my experience, there can be a few hours of training to get you ready, then most of the work is done on Election Day or early voting, where again, depending on your county, you could work the entire day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and sometimes a little more if you're involved in getting the polls open and then closing them. However, you may be needed only part of the day if there are more than enough workers. By the way, it's not necessarily a volunteer position. We've been paid for our work as poll workers. You're not going to get rich, but it's something. Also, you should treat this as a commitment. If you say you're going to work, you should keep to that commitment. As for the training, the Texas Secretary of State's office has a program dedicated to educating citizens on polling place procedures. This is an online program that mirrors the Handbook for Election Judges and Clerks. It's totally free of charge and completely self-paced. Simply go to the Texas Election Training Portal at pollworkertraining.sos.texas.gov. Select Sign Up for the course here. That'll take you to the registration page. This program can be used to learn the procedures you'll need to be a poll worker or a poll watcher. The courses are short. Poll watcher is 14 lessons and can typically be completed in about 30 minutes. Poll worker training is tailored to the types of machines in your county. It's about 33 lessons and may take about an hour or more. At the end of the course, there's an exam, and you print a certificate you'll need to show for the party or candidate that appoints you, as they may have additional training for you to go through. If you've never been involved in elections before or have very little knowledge, the best place to start is with a poll watching position. You can commit as little as 4 hours during early voting or 5 hours on Election Day. Again, this may be more depending on your county. And it's a great place to begin to learn about the system. The experience you get here will also be helpful in getting appointed to a higher level poll worker position. You can also get a listing of election officials from the Secretary of State webpage at www.sos.state.ts.us/elections/voter/current.shtml. Click on the Election Officials link to get a listing by county. The Republican Party of Texas is also developing a program called Texas Election Aid System as a means to protect the vote from beginning through certification. Their findings are 73 counties in Texas are vulnerable. 31 counties are in dire need of help. 10 counties are corrupted and melting down, like Harris County, for instance. It'll take a combined effort of all of us, from the national party all the way down to the grassroots efforts of you, the citizens of Texas, to restore the integrity of our election process. In coming months, your organization will be getting information to you on how you can step up and volunteer for this crucial effort. By November, we need to have everything in place so this midterm election can be the most secure election ever. Now, here's another reason good folks like you need to get involved now. If we're able to get a referendum on the ballot in November of 2023, we need to have experienced people in all of these positions for that election. Volunteering now for these midterm elections will make you a pro a year from now. The time to protect the vote is now, and it's going to take all of us. That's it for this edition of This Month at the TNM. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next month.